The quiet of a warehouse can't smother the sound of a man hitting concrete. After Tuco Salamanca's laughter fades, what remains is the thud of no-dos collapsing and the small, stunned breaths of Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. In the doorway's shadow, Walter's math sharpens against the madness. $737,000, the number it would take to secure a decade for his family. Figures turn in his head while Jesse whispers, shaking, "He'll kill us." Walt's lips barely move. First, the math. Back home, suspicion fogs the air like solvent. Skylar's growing belly and Walt Jr.'s braces smile press against the number in Walt's head, trying to fit inside the budget of a dying man. At school the next day, chalk glides across the board. Activation energy, bond strength, exothermic reactions. The lesson lulls the room. Walt is elsewhere, calculating batches and ounces, margins and time. On Jesse's side of town, fear has a smell. The RV's thin walls vibrate to the desert wind as Walt outlines ricin. No scent, no taste, lethal effect. We put science in the equation instead of violence. Jesse's cigarette trembles behind his hand. He's insane, man. Walt adjusts his glasses. Madness loses to method. At the DEA, Hank Schrader studies purity reports stacked like dominoes. Too clean, too consistent. Someone with a mind is cooking. He doesn't yet imagine that mind-grilling burgers in his backyard on Sundays. Evenings grow heavier. Skylar hears whispers, finds small oddities in payments, and swallows questions because Walt's silence hangs like smoke. Dinner looks normal, sounds normal. Walt sets his fork down and feels the weight of the number again. Why this road? He knows family, but now another word glints beside it. Signature. The blue product isn't just money, it's identity. The episode closes with Walt bent over the bathroom sink, breath hissing. Then he straightens. $737,000 flashes like a neon sign behind his eyes. Every bridge to that sum crosses under Tuco's shadow. Walt intends to walk through it and come out the other side. At dawn, the door shakes like a drum under Tuco's fist. Now, with me. Walt leaves Skylar a half-truth and climbs into the back seat. Jesse beside him, death at the wheel. The desert never truly goes quiet. It hisses with wind and glares with sun. At Tuco's hideout, an old man sits. Hector Salamanca, speechless but armed with a bell. In the kitchen, Walt and Jesse whisper over tea. Tuco watches with a predator's calm. The plan is the capsule, ricin, to dissolve into a cup, invisible and final. But the bell. Hector's eyes flit between them. The single, needling chime pulls Tuco's attention to the mugs. The old man rings a sentence without words. Danger. Lies. Tuco smells the tea, suspicion blooming like fire. You trying to poison me? The plan collapses. The bell has traded science for a shout. Tuco drags them into the sand's throat. Walt stalls with talk of productivity and smarts. Jesse measures distance and chance. Meanwhile, Hank Schrader, following the scent of Jesse's car, crosses county lines on a trail of GPS pings and stubborn luck. The final act opens on the front step. Tuco vows to take them to family land to cook. Walt threads more delay. A motor's growl grows, dust unrolls to reveal Hank's SUV. He steps out, unaware of the stage, adjusts his belt, reaches for his sidearm. The door blasts open, Tuco levels a gun, Hank flinches but stands. Two worlds collide. Walter's secret one and Hank's lawful one. Shots crack. In seconds, Tuco can't carry the bullet's weight and falls. No sirens, just wind cooling blood. Walt and Jesse don't move from hiding. Hank's breath soars, hunter eyes still scanning. He climbs back into his car and drives off, unaware of whom he's saved. Inside, Hector's bell goes still, but in Walt's head, its pulse will ring for years. On the drive back, the desert hums around a new truth. Plans are at best probable. Survival is mandatory. Walt returns to Albuquerque with a revised equation. Crime, violence, science, pud luck. This time, luck wore Hank Schrader's face. Tuco's desert end saves Walt and Jesse, but survival sends a bill. Now they must write a story. Jesse, bruised, sleepless, faces the DEA in his dim house. Hank prowls the rooms, nose catching odors he can't quite place. Jesse's wrecked look fits the role. Victim, not mastermind. The questions pass, the lie holds. Walt's plan plays bigger. In a grocery aisle, a naked man wanders under fluorescent lights. Fugue state, the doctors will say later. Sirens, an ambulance, the clinical hush of a hospital room. Skylar arrives with tears and questions. Walt offers shame and blanks. Oh, I don't remember. He wears amnesia like a mask tailored to fit. Skylar whispers names she's heard Walt mutter at night. Jesse? Walt's gaze slides. His mouth says, I don't know. Trust fissures like glass. The notebook of poems isn't here yet, but Skylar's instinct is the first crack of a later shatter. Hank visits Hector Salamanca at Casa Tranquila. In those sterile halls, a bell breaks the language of law. Photos flash, Hector rings, pride won't speak cop. Hank leaves with frustration and a sticky note in his head. 2 kids, 1 RV, blue. Before Saul Goodman becomes his lawyer, Jesse must lawyer himself. Promises to quit drift away even before Jane. Lying on his bed, he stares at the ceiling. Walt's shadow stands on the wall. We're not done. The knot in Jesse's throat says otherwise. Tuco's death didn't free him, it dropped him into a deeper pit. In the hospital, holding Skylar's hand, Walt feels actually lost for a heartbeat. The role scratches the truth beneath. Who am I becoming? After the doctor leaves, Skylar stands with a soft decision. She'll stay with her mother for a while. Walt wants to say, I'm okay. The words don't come.
Night. Walt returns home. Hears the washer's hum, like the ring of a spoon in a beaker. In a small notebook he scribbles, better cover, less risk. The line plants later disasters. Better stories demand bigger lies.
After hospital fluorescents fade, the city wears a different color for Walter White. That staged fugue provides paperwork, not warmth. At the threshold, on the welcome mat, he feels a chill without a label. Skylar opens the door only an inch. Questions don't need words. Hers stare. When Walt steps in, even the salt shaker looks like it belongs to a stranger. They don't share a bed. Skylar, belly rising with the baby's rhythm, dozes on the couch. Upstairs, Walt counts cracks in the ceiling, each one as clean and sharp as a lie. For Jesse, the word home dissolves at once. His aunt's house, legally his parents', casts him out. The glassware ghosting the garage, the residue, the smell, all of it turns into evidence. No lawyer, no plea, just a sidewalk and rain. He hunts for a place to park the RV. The yard says no. A tow driver rolls his eyes. At dusk, Jesse crouches by a doorway, arms wrapped around knees, the old kid signal for I exist. Skylar, staying with her father, carries silence like smoke. The name Walter on her phone feels like it belongs to someone else. Marie drifts in, smelling of lavender, offering buoyant jokes. They don't help. Sometimes I'm here cures nothing. In a checkout lane, Skylar's breath catches. She speaks to the baby, I will protect you. The sentence doesn't leave room for her husband. At school, Walt writes equations. A kid says, Mr. White, you already taught this, and the chalk stops. He's repeating himself because he's trying to scrub something else out. The ricin capsule, Tuco's eyes, the hospital glare, the 3-inch door gap. All of them belong to one equation he can't balance. Near sunset, Walt parks outside a cheap motel, his address for now. Through the lobby glass, behind a plastic philodendron, a smear of a figure appears. Jesse. Mud on his face, blue chemical stains in his hair from a toppled porta-john, rage gone thin with exhaustion. Where's my money, Walt? He rasps. Enough to get out of here? Walt peels off cash the way a manager budgets problems. Pull it together, he says. We're not done. Back at the DEA, Hank files Tuco and runs into a quiet that doesn't match the jokes and backslaps. Later, when a Schraderbräu bottle cap pops, his pulse detonates, the TV volume climbs. Dust from the desert has stuck to his dreams. I'm good, he says, a little too loud. Next day, Walt decides to move back, whether Skylar wants it or not. He sets a toolbox by the washer. The water heater is broken, a technical reason to step across the threshold. Skylar stands on the stairs, saying nothing. I'm staying, Walt says, as if announcing weather or gravity. Skylar answers almost in a whisper. Then I'll be quiet. Air inside the house becomes a silence, where two people breathe in different worlds. That night, Jesse finds a flophouse room. The fan ticks, the neon sign leaks open across the glass. He looks at Walt's cash, then closes his fist. I'm here, he tells the emptiness. There's a kid in the sentence. From outside, it's only a tired man. Two homes, one full of silence, one of loneliness, close the hour standing side by side in the same city like two solutions that won't mix. Daylight makes Albuquerque look ordinary. School bells, checkout scanners, a freeway hum. Night pulls a blue line through its veins. Walt and Jesse start cooking again. Purity as repeatable as a fingerprint. Order, Walt says. Discipline. On the street, order means something else. Breakage. Hank Schrader is a hero in the Tuco story. At home, they throw a Schraderbräu party. Lids pop, laughter rises, then that tiny snap of a cap smacks his chest from the inside. He smiles too quickly, calls it the beer popping off, and everyone laughs. Later in bed, he sees Tuco's eyes. His fingers knead the sheet's edge like a tired prayer. Trauma waits in the doorway like a shy guest. Jesse makes a decision. A street crew. Badger, Skinny Pete, combo. He pitches to Walt. Wider distribution. Everyone owns a block. Walt nods, eyes scanning for a missing line in the math. Losses? Jesse hesitates. The breakage, stuff that gets stolen, jacked. The word doesn't say accounting to Walt, it says authority. Then charge the breakage, he answers. Jesse's mouth tightens. Violence is Tuco's shadow and he doesn't want to go back. Skinny Pete stands on a corner with a small bag and a big target. A kid flashes steel. The blue disappears. Pete keeps only the absence. When Jesse hears, his jaw knots. He brings it to Walt and the reply is clean. No losses in this business. There's deterrence. For a second, Jesse looks very young. Then he sets his mouth. I'll handle it. Hank opens a box at the office. Tuco's grill, gleaming like a sick trophy. Jokes, smiles, the room flexing. In his throat a knot swells, he can't get enough air. He locks a bathroom door, runs water, the faucets hiss, can't smooth his pulse. He stares at himself. Go. When he steps out, the old Hank's swagger is back, but his face is a shade paler. Chasing the thieves who jacked Skinny Pete, Jesse walks into the city's thinnest streets. Rust on kids' bikes, torn screens on windows. Every door is a story. Every story looks like a family album missing pages. He pauses at one, looks in, backs away. Breakage, he understands, is not only matter, it's people. That evening, Walt faces Skylar over a table gone cold. 2 plates, 2 forks, no words. Walt Jr. in his room. Walt tries small, practical arguments. Money, health, future. Skylar's stare fixes on nothing. The only sound in her head is her own heartbeat. She wants to say it's over and doesn't because the baby grows, and over would mean raising a child alone. Near midnight, Jesse stands by a barrier built from shopping carts. What weighs in his hand isn't Walt's cash, it's his decision. He gathers Badger, Combo, Skinny Pete. It's serious now, nobody steals from us. The line sounds foreign in his ears. He doesn't want violence, he wants respect. On the street, they share a door. Hank lies awake in the dark while Marie sleeps. He taps his phone, opens Tuco's file, closes it. When he finally shuts his eyes, the bottle cap pops again in his chest. He whispers, "Breakage," to the room, to the small crack inside. The hour closes not with Walt doing math, but with an emotional ledger. Loss is not equal to money, people. In the morning, he'll still run a straight production chart, hiding in chemistry. In Albuquerque's outskirts, some streetlights don't shine even at night. Jesse Pinkman walked through broken pavement, his mind buzzing with Walt's orders and the street's echo. He had found the pair who robbed Skinny Pete, but this wasn't just about money or breakage. It was about respect, authority, and proving he existed. Through a rusted fence, he saw the house. The front door hung ajar. Inside, a stench hit him. Rotting food, cheap chemicals, neglect. Bottles littered the floor. Stains spread across the walls. Empty baggies in corners. But at the center of the chaos sat a child. Not crying, not curious. His eyes held a frozen acceptance. Jesse froze too. This wasn't just drugs or deals. This was lives. "Hey, little man," Jesse said softly. No hardness in his tone. Maybe no one had spoken to the boy like that in a long time. The child said nothing, only watched. Jesse crouched, leveling his eyes. "You need anything?" Still silence. Jesse's anger grew, not at the kid, but at the parents who left him in this wasteland. Noise came from the back room. The couple stumbled in, clothes dirty, eyes twitching from days of use. The woman shrieked at Jesse. The man smirked, swaggering toward him. "You ripped Pete. I want it back," Jesse said, steady. Tension thickened. The man pointed at the center of the room. an ATM machine, rusted and heavy like some grotesque shrine. "Money's in there," he bragged. But it was empty, a dead idol. They had spent days trying to crack it. Jesse saw the obsession in their eyes, the collapse in their lives. The child stayed silent in the corner. For a moment, Jesse wondered, is this my future? The house felt like a mirror, a warning of where his path could end. The fight broke out. The man shoved the woman, shouting filth. Jesse stepped in, but they were locked in their spiral. Rage flared. The woman shoved back, hard. The ATM toppled with a crash, pinning the man beneath. Silence. The weight smothered his last breath. The boy's eyes widened, unblinking. Jesse staggered back, stunned. Then he looked at the child. A decision sparked. He couldn't fix this house, but he could save one person. He lifted the boy gently, tried to fix him food in the kitchen, bread stale, but he made a sandwich anyway. He placed it in front of him, a gesture more human than anything the child had seen in days. Jesse dialed 911. His voice was low, almost guilty. "There's a kid here. Take care of him." As he left, he glanced back. Did the child wave, or did Jesse only imagine it? That faint motion lodged deep inside him. For the first time, the human side of the trade stood naked before him. Out in the night, Jesse's face carried conflict. His life was wrecked, yet for the boy, he left a small hope. And maybe, for once, Jesse Pinkman had truly done something right. Even in daylight, Albuquerque felt heavy. But that day, something different hummed in the air. A narco corrido played on radios drifting north from the Mexican border, its lyrics named Walter White, glorifying Heisenberg. Jesse Pinkman turned off his car radio, yet the melody clung to his ears. A song on the streets meant word had reached the cartel. In the lab, Walter snapped at Jesse. "This isn't praise, it's a warning." Jesse tried to shrug it off. To him, being sung about meant legend. "Look, Walt," he grinned, "your name's in songs. We're not nobodies anymore." But Walter's face stayed hard. He knew the cartel's shadow. Their notice wasn't fame, it was death's invitation. Meanwhile, Skylar felt her husband slipping further away. At dinner, Walter's silence grew unbearable. At work, Ted Benecke's easy smile filled the gap. Skylar's conscience wrestled, but her heart leaned toward the attention she'd been starved of. That night, driving home under headlights and shadows, Walter realized a song had dragged him into the cartel's sights. For the first time, he felt Heisenberg pulling him away from family, deeper into a storm. When Jesse got picked up on a street job, Walter was cornered. That's when a new name appeared, Saul Goodman. Neon billboards, cheesy commercials, loud ties, he looked like a joke. But underneath, he was one of the sharpest players in the underworld. In Jesse's cell, Saul strutted in as if he owned the place. Jesse panicked, but Saul's casual grin somehow steadied him. "Your problem isn't money, it's your teacher," he said. Jesse frowned, but when Saul's eyes flicked toward Walter, the meaning was clear. Meeting Saul, Walter realized at once, this man wasn't just a threat, he was a bridge. Every word Saul spoke dripped with negotiation. "I get you out, you pay me, we all win." Walter thought hard. What Saul offered wasn't just Jesse's freedom. It was a partner who knew the cracks in the system, and Walter understood. To build an empire, chemistry alone wouldn't do. He needed a man who could walk between law and chaos. The doctor's news hit Walter hard. Time was short. He didn't tell Skylar, not fully Jessie either. Instead, he grabbed the RV and drove Jessie into the desert. 4 days straight of cooking. For Walter, time meant money, and money meant the only legacy he could leave. In the desert, the RV became a lab. Days burned with sun, nights froze with silence. Walter worked furiously. Every measure, every reaction felt like defiance against death itself. Jessie cracked jokes, but he saw the exhaustion in Walter's eyes. Then fortune turned. The RV's battery died, fuel gone, stranded miles from civilization. Jessie panicked. "We're dead!" But Walter turned to science again. Wires, metal, chemical reactions. He conjured a miracle, reviving the RV. Those 4 days were hell for Jessie, but for Walter, they were rebirth. Facing death, he proved he could survive by intellect alone. One thought burned inside him. I'm still in control. Skylar White's days grew heavier with her swelling belly. She juggled the house, Flynn, the baby on the way. But what cut deepest was Walter's absence. Even at dinner, when he sat across the table, his eyes were distant, fixed on some invisible horizon. His fork clinked against the plate in silence. Skylar felt invisible beside him. At work, Ted Bernanke brought a different air. A small joke, a soft touch on her shoulder, an easy laugh. Ordinary moments, yet they fed something in Skylar long starved. She felt seen, safe. It frightened her and comforted her all at once. Her conscience whispered of betrayal, but her heart refused to let go of the attention. Walter buried himself in another world. With Saul Goodman smoothing the edges, the business grew sharper, more efficient. Money flowed faster, risks more controlled. His mind wasn't on home, but on empire. He noticed Skylar drifting, but dismissed it. I don't need her love. I need respect for my power. On Jessie's side, a new light flickered. Jane Margolis. Once just a neighbor, she began to fill a void. Her sketches, her quiet smile cut through his darkness. For the first time in a long time, Jessie felt ordinary. Yet in Jane's past, shadows stirred, ready to spill into his path. Jane brought not only light into Jessie's world, but shadow. One night, she came with a small packet. Let's have some fun, she said. Smoke drifted, easing Jessie's mind before breaking it apart. At first, Jessie felt powerful. Beside Jane, hearing her laughter, he thought he had found happiness. But as days passed, the chains tightened. Each high left a deeper hollow behind. Walter noticed. Jessie slipped in the lab, careless, slow. Walter exploded. Oh, you could ruin everything! Jessie snarled back. Don't belittle me, Walt. I'm not your slave. Yet inside, Jessie knew he was slipping. What felt like comfort in Jane's arms was really the tightening grip of addiction. The partnership between Walter and Jessie wobbled like a tightrope. Jessie's carelessness and Walter's need for control clashed endlessly. One night in the lab, a small slip sparked a storm. Walter snapped. We'll sink because of you, Jessie roared. No, Walt, we're sinking because of your pride. An invisible wall rose between them. To Walter, Jessie was still a student. To Jessie, Walter had become not a teacher, but a tyrant. Meanwhile, Skylar caught Walter whispering into the phone. Watching his shadowed face in the back room, she saw nothing familiar. One thought echoed in her mind. This man is no longer my husband. Jesse Pinkman's new house once felt like freedom. But now the rooms were filled with smoke and Jane's laughter. Jane Margolis was a turning point in his life. With her, Jesse felt loved, valued. Yet hidden within that bond was a darkness that grew more visible each day. At first, Jane shared her world, her drawings, her dreams, her fears. Jesse shared his own story, failures, family disappointment, the strange partnership with Walter. Jane listened, smiled, stayed. That trust was vital, but her past addiction slowly crept back. One night, Jane brought a small packet. "Just for fun?" she said. Jesse hesitated. He'd used before, but since working with Walter, he'd tried to stay professional. Her eyes pulled him in. They used together. At first came laughter, weightlessness, the blur of time. Jesse thought it was escape, but in the morning his head pounded, body shook. Jane smiled as if nothing had happened. Days blurred, the house rotted, stains on walls, needles on the floor, half-eaten food. Jane dragged him deeper. Together they dreamed of taking the money and running. She whispered, "No one understands us. We're together." Jesse clung to it. Unlike Walter's constant belittling, Jane seemed to value him. But Walter saw the change. Jesse's mistakes multiplied in the lab. Numbers blurred, attention slipped. Walter snapped, "You're killing yourself, Jesse, and dragging me down too." Jesse shot back, eyes burning. "Don't belittle me, Walt. I'm not your slave." Walter's gaze turned cold. He knew Jesse was surrendering to addiction, and he thought, "I must pull him from Jane, or she'll destroy us both." Skylar White had reached her limit. Suspicion and fear grew until she could no longer ignore it. Walter vanished at night, whispered on the phone, moved strangely in the bank. Piecing it together, she no longer saw her husband, only a stranger. One evening she asked, "Walter, what are you hiding?" Walter said nothing. No lie, no excuse, only silence. Tears streamed down her face. That silence weighed heavier than 100 lies. At work, she found comfort in Ted Benecke's presence. His warm smile filled the void Walter's gaze had left. Skylar felt guilty but also alive, seen in a way she hadn't been for years. Walter noticed her drifting but didn't care. His thought was simple. "I need empire, not family." In that moment, the bond to his home cracked completely. Walter's blue crystal had become legend on the streets. Its purity whispered through the underworld until it reached the ears of a man at the top, Gustavo Fring. Outwardly, Gus was just a fast food owner, quiet, orderly, calm, but behind his eyes burned cold calculation. Meeting Walter, he studied him carefully. No threats, no anger, only numbers. "Will you work for me?" Gus asked. "In return, order, safety, money." Walter hesitated. One voice inside said no. This deal meant no return. But a louder voice shouted, "This is the door to empire!" Jesse couldn't feel the weight of this man. He was lost in Jane's arms. But to Walter, Gus Fring was the key to a new world, and nothing tempted him more than turning that key. Walter White saw Jesse's new lifestyle as a growing threat. With Jane in his life, Jesse was distracted, addicted, careless. For Walter, it wasn't just about money anymore. Control, power, empire, everything was endangered by Jesse's recklessness. One evening, Walter entered Jesse's house. What he saw was crushing. Needles scattered on the floor, the smell of smoke, dirty plates. And on the bed, Jane and Jesse asleep, side by side. On the table sat a bag stuffed with cash. Walter's eyes fixed on it. To him, that bag was the future, the legacy for his family. Jane stirred awake. She saw the bag. Her eyes lit up. She nudged Jesse, but he only mumbled, half-conscious. Jane stared Walter down. "This money is ours. We're leaving. We'll start a new life. You don't need us." Walter's gaze froze. Inside he thought, "This girl will destroy everything I built." Jane's hold over Jesse was lethal. If Jesse left with her, the empire collapsed. Walter tried to rouse Jesse, but drugs had him locked. Jane stood firm, threatening, "Hurt him and I'll expose you. I know who you are." The words stabbed like a blade. Silence stretched. Walter looked at Jesse, then at Jane. In that moment, he saw the bond of father and son, teacher and student, then the fracture. His mind hardened. Jane was a danger to them both. When Walter left that night, his chest was heavy. He knew soon he would face a deadly choice. Midnight. Jesse and Jane lay in deep, drugged sleep. The room reeked, curtains shut, air stifling. Walter stepped in to check on Jesse and froze. The two young lovers sprawled beside money. Then Jane rolled onto her back. Suddenly her breath caught, chest heaving, throat choking. She was suffocating. Walter stood at the doorway. A few steps, a reach, and he could save her. But he didn't. Tears welled in his eyes. Inside, storms raged. On one side, a fractured fatherly love for Jesse. On the other, the fragile empire he was building. If Jane lived, she would drag Jesse deeper. One thought rang in his mind. If I intervene now, she'll destroy us both. Jane's struggles weakened. Her eyes glazed. Her body slackened. Silence swallowed the room. Walter never moved. That silence became proof of his choice. He looked at Jesse, still lost in sleep. Walter told himself, "I saved him." But in truth, he condemned Jesse to a greater loneliness. After Jane's death, Jesse's life shattered. Morning came and her lifeless body lay beside him. His screams tore the walls, tears poured. Walter watched from a distance, acting as if nothing had happened. Jesse was broken, but Walter's eyes held only cold resolve. Skylar now saw clearly. The whispers on the phone, the strange bank moves, the stranger in his eyes. This was no longer her husband. And then the sky broke. Jane's father, an air traffic controller, returned to work, drowning in grief. His mind fogged, his hands shook. One night, two planes collided under his watch. The explosion painted Albuquerque's skies in fire. Metal rained down. Panic spread in the streets. Silence gave way to a monstrous roar. Walter stood in his yard, staring upward. As wreckage fell, his face showed one expression, dark triumph. He believed even the universe echoed his choices. In that moment, it wasn't Walter White who looked at the sky. It was Heisenberg.